Hi, my name is Theresa Andersen, and I welcome you to this episode of Ducking into Wisdom in order to create more self-awareness and to start cultivating more ease in your life. I have a guest, and I'll introduce her to you in a moment. In each of these episodes, we'll be exploring new ways of perceiving ourselves in order to learn how to bring more wisdom practices into our daily lives in order to reconnect with our authentic selves. Life can be challenging, right? And we could all use a little bit more help and wisdom in order to help us navigate our day-to-day lives with ourselves and others. In today's episode, I would like to welcome now my guest, Anne Marie. And Anne Marie and I are going to be discussing how a piece of poetry can affect us in positive and interesting ways and really amazing ways when we stop to really let it land. And during times when we are grappling with challenging things in our lives, it's sometimes really helpful just to look and read some poetry and see how things start to kind of hit us in interesting ways. In this episode, we're going to be exploring a poem by Rumi. And in case you're not aware of who Rumi is, Rumi was a 13th century Sufi mystic. And Rumi was well known for his poignant and exquisite poetry. And the poems that he created were touching on themes such as love, spiritual awakening, and a lot about our human connection to what is bigger and feels beyond us. So I invite you to use whatever word resonates with you for what represents and resonates for what is outside of yourself that is bigger. And just keep that in mind as we're going through the poem. And I invite you now to relax and listen as I recite Rumi's poem, Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. So for the listeners and for you, Anne Marie, I think a good starting point around looking at this poem by Rumi is, for me, one thing that came up is the idea about forgiveness. And we've all maybe been, even recently, in situations where we've been in a tug of war or in a place where we've been into some kind of it could be with a person, it could be with a situation where there's a tug of war where there's no resolution. And whatever's going on has got us in a push-pull, and we're in conflict or we're in a stuck place. And I wonder about a couple of things. Like I said, there's forgiveness that popped into my awareness, but also there is for me something about when I get in these tough tug of wars, I sometimes get to a point instead of trying to, win somebody over or think that I need to be right or they're wrong. It comes to a point about me wanting to just drop the rope and let something shift. So just based on that, what comes up for you, Anne Marie?
Yeah, what in the words in this poem that really stand out for me is the wrongdoing and right doing. Often I can get stuck in this is not the right way to do it. You're doing it wrong. And so that tug of war of not seeing the other person for who they are and what gems they have to teach me. I get stuck in that box of it's right or it's wrong.
So something really fascinating that I'm remembering, I don't remember the whole sentence or sentences around it, but one of the modern day spiritual teachers that I love, and I know you love her too, is Carolyn Mace. And in order for people to get present, she said there's certain things that people need to do. So instead of being locked into what we're thinking about, and she points to if we took out certain words out of our vocabulary, like blame, guilt, feeling entitled, the flavor of what she was saying is basically we have to drop some things because if we are in a tug of war, there is maybe pieces of us that wants to blame somebody else or feeling like, they should feel guilty or they've done something and they need to pay for what they've done. So I'm not letting go of the rope. So even if we were to think of removing the word blame out of our vocabulary, that might shift so many things in order to help us get present. So we're not thinking about what we want to say to that person or how we're right. It's loosening us up to be present so that we can try to show up with fresh eyes and to look at the situation instead of being in this locked position. It's more looking at opportunities of what are some new words that might heal or do some care and repair in this situation.
Yeah, it's perspective. And what is my perspective and what is their perspective, and how can we navigate differently? And one of us needs to, uh, like you say, loosen up or let go. Let go. And then as one person shifts, it shifts the whole energy of the situation. Uh, and and I often have said, um, it's kind of like this system theory. If one thing shifts in the organization, everything else has to shift to accommodate this new perspective. So how can I be that person that lets go and begin to see things through a different lens?
So I think that's a really great place for people to contemplate that are listening to this and just let that land. And sometimes they just have to live into the question of how might I think of things differently or have a different word or two that I might be able to show up with. And getting back to this forgiveness piece, so it depends. So if I'm talking about an intimate relationship, whether it's a friendship or someone in my family or someone that really matters to me, then I have to be discerning and think, okay, what is the cost of me staying in this tug of war? Is this a relationship that's worth my investment of time and energy, or what do I need to pull away from? Or how can I invest in a different way to show them that I want to do care and repair or that they're valuable? Do I have to do a bit about forgiveness? And people that are thinking about forgiveness, it's too much to get into the forgiveness. I mean, that's a whole other episode, but that idea of how can we learn to look at a situation and see that there might be some room in order to either forgive ourselves or forget the other, or to look at what they might have presented and the meaning and the context and see if we might find better forms of communication to give feedback, just to let them know they are valuable and that when that situation happened or whatever triggered the tug of war or the stance and the stuckness, what is it that can be pulled back on enough where the unknotting can start to take place, and that compassion might be something, self-compassion, seeing myself as being triggered, but also not knowing the story that I put on the other person and how they might be really hurting in ways that I'm not yet aware of.
Exactly, Shruta. It's what's the price that you want to pay for not repairing the relationship, or to look at it differently. And and back to the poem, it speaks about nature as well, and nature is such a healing and place of gaining insight. It talks about meeting. There's a field, and so when I picture a field, it can be full of daisies or and bumblebees, green grass, and the smell. And and it speaks about the soul lying down into the grass. So being touched by the earth and the heartbeat of the earth. It's just really quite healing and provides me with a space of, oh, a breath of fresh air for me to then rise up and be in a different place, a different person, a different perspective, a different mindset. Um, and it's refreshing.
That's really lovely. So it's like allowing yourself to be nourished and grounded in order to literally kind of pop up again in a new mindset or in a new heart space. I was also thinking of like, really, here's some examples. So when I am in a really stuck place, which I have been with people that I really care about, and what I've learned to do sometimes when I'm so frustrated, and it's like how I signal to them. I'll send them this Rumi poem in a text message, and it's signaling that what are we doing here? Where's there the ability for us to revisit this? And it's a softening because the way we are as humans, it's not easy sometimes just to open that door because we feel sometimes we want to do it and we have mixed feelings about it because we want the other person to reach out or to give us the white flag or whatever that is. So, anyways, that's something that I do. And I find that there's usually openings, there's softness that starts to arrive. And it might take a couple of days or something, but there's usually a shift. And then there's an opportunity to show up more neutrally and to see what can develop with that new opportunity.
And I'm reminded as well, Theresa, of a lady in my growing up years who was someone who really exemplified honesty and integrity and courage and self-respect. And and knowing her background, um, appreciating the struggle, the decisions and choices that she made, and through it all has self-respect and integrity. And so I looked upon her to sometimes be that character guide to help me to shift my state of suffering into a place of taking a higher road.
That's great. So looking at someone that's modeling it in that way. And another thing that came to me is playfulness and kind of laughing. Like, so when I send, for example, I'm doubling it back again to the quote that I send, like, or the Rumi poem that I send to people for a text when I'm in that tough place. And it usually makes me laugh a bit because then I realize how stupid, how short life is. And what's the point of making people in because everybody's uncomfortable and everybody's paying too high of a price for being in that space. So be more playful at times. And it's sort of like in the worst of times too, I've also remembered when you have a sense of humor, it breaks the ice. And I take myself too seriously still, and I need to lighten up. So this is a reminder for me to be playful and to kind of like, really, what am I doing?
It makes me laugh because sometimes in my own family, I will say something and people take it the wrong way, and I go, "Oh, I should have put up my little paddle that says this is humor."
Yeah, right. Because yeah, everything we're all misinterpreting at times the other person's message or the intent of it. So it comes down to maybe we need to check in with ourselves and with others and go, do I have this right? Or where did I go and get off on a tangent or explain maybe more so I can understand? So I think that's a really good place for us to leave it with listeners because we've given them, I think, a lot to think about. And just to remember, just do things that feel intuitively the right amount of courage to kind of put yourself out there and risk take. And just do things that you can start to feel success when you start to do a bit of this, having courage in new ways and recircling around something that is tender-hearted and to realize there's two people in a tug of war and that, I mean, we all want to feel better anyways, don't we? So thank you very much, Anne Marie, for spending some of your time with me. And for you listeners, thank you very much for being here today. And until next time, I wish you well.